Before we begin this incredible story of hidden identity and sweet redemption, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If you believe that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, give this video a like right now. Let's get into it. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it aggressively dismantled the day. It was a Tuesday afternoon at Little Steps Daycare, a modest, underfunded facility tucked away in a neighborhood that gentrification was trying, and failing, to swallow. Evelyn Vance, 45 years old with eyes that held a deep, ancient patience, wiped the mud off the floor for the third time that hour. She wore a fading blue smock with a cartoon bear on the pocket. To the parents who rushed in and out, clutching their lattes and checking their smartwatches, Evelyn was part of the furniture. She was the Ms. Evie, who wiped noses, broke up fights over red crayons, and ensured their children were still breathing by 5 p.m. They didn't know about the stack of journals in her locker. They didn't know about the PhD from Cambridge that gathered dust in her attic. They didn't know that 10 years ago, Evelyn Vance was one of the most promising researchers in developmental neuropsychology until her mother's early onset Alzheimer's forced her to leave the ivory tower and take a job that allowed her to disappear. The door chimed. It was Marcus Sterling. Marcus was not like the other parents. He was a donor. A tech millionaire who had recently taken custody of his 6-year-old nephew, Leo, after a family tragedy. Marcus wore suits that cost more than Evelyn's car. He looked perpetually exhausted, terrified, and out of his depth. Ms. Evie, Marcus said, breathless. I'm sorry I'm late. The board meeting ran over. How was he? Evelyn looked toward the reading corner. Leo was sitting quietly, stacking blocks. When Leo had first arrived 3 months ago, he had been a hurricane of trauma, screaming, biting, unable to make eye contact. He had a breakthrough today, Mr. Sterling, Evelyn said softly. He verbally identified frustration before acting on it. He told me he felt a stormy inside. Marcus looked at the boy, bewildered. Stormy? He spoke to you? He hasn't spoken a full sentence to me in weeks. The therapists cost me $5,000 a month and they get nothing. Therapy is clinical, Marcus, Evelyn said, dropping the honorific without realizing it. Leo doesn't need a clinic. He needs a secure base. He needs to know that his dysregulation doesn't frighten the caregiver. It's basic Bowlby attachment theory, applied with a neuroplasticity focus. Marcus froze. He looked at the woman in the blue smock holding a mop. That's a very specific terminology for a daycare provider. Evelyn caught herself. She offered a practiced, humble smile, the mask she wore to survive. I read a lot, Mr. Sterling. I just care about the kids. Marcus narrowed his eyes, intrigued. Look, I have a favor to ask. A big one. Next week, I'm the keynote sponsor for the Global Summit on Child Psychology in Geneva. I have to bring Leo, I don't have anyone else. But I can't watch him during the lectures. I need a nanny for the trip. I'll pay triple your monthly salary for 3 days of work. Evelyn's heart hammered. The Geneva Summit. It was the Super Bowl of her former life. The research she had secretly continued to write, papers published under her initials, E.J. Vance, was being discussed there. I don't have a passport that's valid, she lied, fear gripping her. I have a private jet and lawyers, Marcus said, waving his hand. We can expedite anything. Please, Evelyn. He trusts you. I'm drowning here. She looked at Leo. The boy looked up and gave her a tiny, tentative wave. Okay, Evelyn whispered. I'll go. The flight to Geneva was a blur of champagne, which Evelyn declined, and anxious pacing by Marcus. He spent the flight reviewing notes for his opening remarks. He was a philanthropist, not a scientist, and he was terrified of sounding stupid in front of the world's leading minds. It says here, Marcus muttered, that Dr. E.J. Vance's theory on the silent echo suggests trauma is stored in the preverbal cortex. What does that even mean in plain English? Evelyn was sipping water, looking out the window at the clouds. She felt a jolt hearing her own theory read back to her. It means, she said softly, not turning her head, that the body remembers what the mind is too young to have words for. If a child is scared before they can talk, the fear lives in their muscles, their stomach, their breath. You can't talk them out of it. You have to feel them out of it. Marcus stopped typing. He looked at her, really looked at her, for a second. You have a way with words, Evelyn. You should have been a teacher. I am a teacher, she said. I teach toddlers how to share. They arrived in Geneva. The hotel was a palace of glass and gold. The lobby was swarming with delegates, men in bow ties, women in sharp blazers, clutching programs and arguing about cognitive behavioral therapy. Evelyn felt small. She was wearing her best outfit, a simple gray pantsuit from a department store rack, but against the tailored Italian wool of the delegates, she looked like staff. Which, to them, she was. Check-in is there, Marcus said, handing her a room key. Leo is in the suite with me, but I've booked you a room on the 4th floor. Can you take Leo for a walk? I have a pre-dinner mixer with the board of directors. Evelyn took Leo's hand. As they walked through the lobby, she felt the eyes of the attendees sliding over her. She wasn't a person to them, she was the help. Excuse me, a tall man with silver hair and a British accent bumped into her. He didn't apologize. He just brushed off his sleeve. This was Dr. Alistair Thorne, a man Evelyn recognized instantly. He was a critic of her work, or rather, a critic of E.J. Vance's work. He had written scathing op-eds calling Vance's empathy-based approach soft science. Watch where you're going, Thorne snapped. My apologies, Evelyn said, keeping her head down. Staff entrance is round the back, Thorne muttered to his colleague as he walked away. Hotel standards are slipping. Evelyn squeezed Leo's hand. Leo squeezed back. That evening, Marcus insisted Evelyn join him for the gala dinner. Leo needs to eat, and I can't feed him while I'm networking. Just sit at the table and keep him quiet. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. Evelyn sat at table 1, right next to Marcus, though she positioned her chair slightly back, keeping her focus on cutting Leo's chicken. The table was filled with heavy hitters. Dr. Thorne was there, along with Dr. Shelley Wu from Yale and a few other dignitaries. So, Marcus, Dr. Thorne swirled his wine. It is generous of you to fund this summit. Though I admit, I am surprised you have such an interest in child psychology. Tech is usually so detached. My nephew has changed my perspective, Marcus said, gesturing to Leo. Thorne glanced at Leo, then at Evelyn. He offered a tight, condescending smile. And I see you've brought the nanny. Charming. It's good to see domestic staff integrated. Evelyn didn't look up. Actually, Marcus said, feeling a strange need to defend her, though he didn't know why. Evelyn is amazing with him. She understands things about his behavior that the doctors missed. Thorne laughed. A dry, rasping sound. I'm sure she has a wonderful maternal instinct. But let's not confuse affection with expertise, Marcus. We are discussing the complexities of the human mind here. The keynote tomorrow is regarding the identity of the elusive E.J. Vance. I intend to debunk his theories publicly. His? Evelyn spoke. The word hung in the air. The table went silent. Thorne turned to her, eyebrows raised. Excuse me? You said his theories, Evelyn said, her voice steady, though her hands were trembling under the table. Why do you assume E.J. Vance is a man? Thorne smirked, looking around the table for validation. Because, my dear, the aggression with which Vance challenges the status quo of clinical detachment is distinctly masculine in its audacity. Or perhaps, it is a woman, and she is simply too emotional to show her face. Either way, the work is amateur. It lacks the rigor of peer review. The work has been cited 40,000 times in the last 3 years, Evelyn said. She picked up her napkin. And it's not about aggression. It's about resonance. Vance argues that clinical detachment is actually a trauma response by the therapist, not a tool for healing. Thorne's face turned red. And what would a childminder know about therapist trauma responses? Evelyn, that's enough, Marcus whispered, embarrassed. I'm just saying, Evelyn said, locking eyes with Thorne. You can't debunk what you don't understand. I have a PhD from Oxford. Thorne slammed his hand on the table. I have published 12 books. Who are you? You wipe noses for a living. I'm just the nanny, Evelyn said quietly. She stood up. Come on, Leo. Let's go get some ice cream. As she walked away, the table was thick with awkward tension. Marcus watched her go, a strange suspicion beginning to form in the back of his mind. The next morning, the grand hall was packed. 2,000 attendees. Cameras rolling. This was the main event. Marcus was on stage to introduce the panel. He looked sharp, but he was sweating. He finished his introduction and took a seat on the side of the stage. Dr. Thorne took the podium. Behind him, a massive screen projected the title, The Fallacy of Empathy, Why E.J. Vance is Wrong. Thorne began his lecture. It was brutal. He took sentences from Vance's papers out of context, mocking them. He made jokes about hugs as medicine. The audience, largely traditionalists, chuckled. Vance refuses to appear at these conferences, Thorne boomed into the microphone. Why? Because Vance knows that under scrutiny, this house of cards falls apart. Vance is a ghost. A fraud. A fiction created to sell sentimental nonsense to weak parents. In the back of the hall, near the exit, Evelyn stood with Leo. She hadn't planned to come in. She was just supposed to wait in the green room. But Leo wanted to see his uncle Marcus. She listened to Thorne tear her life's work apart. She thought about her mother, who had died not knowing her own name. She thought about the nights she spent writing those papers while her mother slept, the only time she felt like herself. She thought about the kids at the daycare, kids the system had thrown away, who she had saved using these exact methods. She felt a fire in her chest. It wasn't anger. It was duty. Thorne clicked to the next slide. It was a complex diagram of neural pathways. Look at this, Thorne laughed. Vance claims that the amygdala can be rewired through co-regulation in under 6 weeks. Impossible. There is no data. Actually, the data is in the supplementary appendix of the 2022 Quarterly Review, page 142, a voice rang out. It wasn't shouted. But the acoustics of the room carried it. Heads turned. Evelyn was walking down the center aisle. She was still in her simple gray suit. She held Leo's hand. Security, Thorne said, squinting against the lights. Please remove the domestic staff. Wait, Marcus stood up on stage. He held up a hand to security. Let her speak. Evelyn didn't stop walking until she reached the base of the stage. She lifted Leo up to Marcus, who took the boy, bewildered. Then, Evelyn climbed the stairs. She walked to the podium. Thorne looked at her like she was a cockroach. Young lady, this is a scientific conference, not a PTA meeting. Evelyn reached into her purse. She pulled out a tattered, leather-bound notebook. She placed it on the lectern, right over Thorne's notes. You're referencing this rewiring a study, Evelyn said into the microphone. Her voice was rich, calm, and commanded instant authority. But you're looking at the control group data. If you look at the variable group, the children who received consistent, attuned responsiveness, the amygdala activity decreased by 40%. I know this, Dr. Thorne, because I coded the fMRI scans myself. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Thorne scoffed. You coded, don't be ridiculous. You're Marcus Sterling's nanny. I am a daycare worker, yes, Evelyn said. And it is the most important job in the world. But before that, I was a doctoral candidate at Cambridge. And for the last 10 years, I have been publishing under my initials. She looked out at the crowd. My name is Evelyn Janice Vance. I am Dr. E. J. Vance. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Then, someone in the front row gasped. A young woman in the third row stood up. Oh my God. It's her. Thorne went pale. You are Vance? And you, Alistair, Evelyn turned to him, have been misinterpreting my work on the silent echo for 5 years. You claim I ignore biology. I don't. I argue that biology is shaped by connection. You treat the child as a broken machine. I treat the child as a growing ecosystem. She turned back to the audience. You look at me and you see a nanny. You see a woman who wipes floors. So you dismiss me. Just like you dismiss the children who don't fit your clinical models. You dismiss the parents who can't afford your fees. You sit in these hotels and talk about poverty, about trauma, but you never touch it. I touch it every day. I hold it while it cries. And that is why my data is better than yours. Because mine is real. She paused. If you want to help children, stop trying to fix them from a podium. Get down on the floor. Get your knees dirty. Look them in the eye. That is where the science is. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then, Marcus Sterling started clapping. He stood up, Leo in his arms, and he clapped. Then the young woman in the third row stood up. Then the entire back row. Then the professors. Wave after wave of people stood up. The applause started as a ripple and became a roar. A standing ovation. Thorne stood frozen, shrinking into the background, his credibility evaporating in the heat of the applause. Evelyn didn't smile. She just nodded, took her notebook, and walked away from the podium. Marcus found her an hour later in the hotel garden. She was sitting on a bench, letting Leo chase a butterfly. Marcus sat down next to her. He loosened his tie. He looked shaken. I didn't know, he said. I swear to God, Evelyn, I didn't know. I didn't want you to, Evelyn said. I wanted the job. I needed the money. Research doesn't pay the rent, Marcus. Especially when you don't play the university politics game. You have a PhD from Cambridge, Marcus shook his head. And I had you cleaning up spilled juice. Spilled juice is important, Evelyn smiled. Leo is happy today. That matters more than the speech. Marcus looked at her with a profound respect. Thorne resigned from the board of the summit about 10 minutes ago. Humiliation is a powerful motivator. He'll be fine, Evelyn shrugged. His ego will recover. Evelyn, Marcus turned to her. I want to offer you something. Not a job as a nanny. I want to fund a center. A research and care facility. In Seattle. Run by you. No board of directors, no red tape. You run it your way. You hire the staff. You publish the papers. And you take care of the kids who can't afford the fancy therapists. Evelyn looked at him. She saw the sincerity in his eyes. And Leo, she asked. Leo will be your first enrollment, if you'll have him, Marcus smiled. Evelyn looked at the little boy laughing in the grass. She looked at the mountains of Geneva. She thought about the mop and bucket back at Little Steps. Okay, she said. But I'm keeping the smock. It has good pockets. Marcus laughed. Deal. 6 months later, the Vance Center for Child Development opened in downtown Seattle. It wasn't in a glass tower, it was in a renovated warehouse with big windows and colorful murals. It became the leading research institute for childhood trauma in the country. Evelyn Vance published 3 more books, but she never stopped working the floor. If you walked in on a Tuesday, you wouldn't find her in an office. You'd find her in the reading corner, sitting on the floor, helping a terrified child find the words for the storm inside them. She was Dr. Vance to the world. But to the kids, she was just Ms. Evie. And that was the only title that mattered. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment down below saying respect. It's amazing what happens when we stop judging and start listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.